Gladiator II is a 2024 historical epic film directed and produced by Ridley Scott that is a sequel to Gladiator, released in 2000. Written by David Scarpa based on the story he wrote with Peter Craig, the film was produced by Scott Free Productions and distributed by Paramount Pictures. It stars Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, Fred Hechinger, Connie Nielsen, and Denzel Washington. Jacobi and Nielsen reprise their roles from the first film, with Mescal replacing Spencer Treat Clark. Mescal portrays Lucius Verus Aurelius, the exiled prince of Rome, who becomes a prisoner of war and fights as a gladiator for Macrinus, a former slave who plots to overthrow the twin emperors, Geta and Caracalla. A sequel to Gladiator was discussed as early as June 2001, with David Franzoni and John Logan set to return as screenwriters. Development then was halted when DreamWorks Pictures was sold to Paramount in 2006. The film was finally announced in 2018, and Mescal was cast in the lead role in January 2023 with a script by Scarpa. Filming took place between June 2023 and January 2024, with a 5-month delay due to the 2023 Hollywood labour disputes. Gladiator II then would premiere in Sydney, Australia on October 30, 2024, and then was released in the United Kingdom on November 15th and the United States on November 22nd. The film received generally positive reviews from critics and would go on to gross $462.2 million worldwide, against a budget of $210 million. It would also receive 2 nominations at the 82nd Golden Globe Awards for Cinematic and Box Office Achievement and Best Supporting Actor for Washington, and was also nominated for Best Costume Design at the 97th Academy Awards. Ridley Scott's logic to make a sequel was that even though Maximus Decimus Meridius died at the end of the original film, who of course was famously played by Russell Crowe, the question lingered of what happened to Lucius, considering the questions about his whereabouts, perfect for a second film. Initially, the plot was to be set 15 years later and included the Praetorian Guards ruling over Rome, as an older Lucius, the son of Lucia in Gladiator, is searching for the truth about his biological father. Initially, the producers and Russell Crowe were collaboratively extensively looking to understand how ancient Roman beliefs regarded the afterlife. And Crowe and Scott had discussed how to bring back the former character if he was resurrected. Scott concluded that Crowe would have to return either as Maximus's double or play another character entirely. Crowe said he favoured the fantasy element in bringing Maximus back to life, while the studio was basing the film on Lucius as the son of Maximus and Lucia. As mentioned earlier, after experiencing financial difficulties, DreamWorks Pictures was eventually sold to Paramount Pictures in 2006, and development for the sequel was halted. In November 2018, it was announced that Paramount was greenlighting the development of a sequel, with Scott in early negotiations to once again serve as director. In June 2019, the producers revealed the script would take 25 to 30 years after the first film, and the plot was reported to centre around Lucius. By September 2021, Scott stated the script was once again being worked on, and that the film would begin production after his completion of Napoleon. Scott stated in an interview that he had struggled for 10 months to write the script for 4 years previously, until they revisited the idea of Lucius as a survivor of the original film. Then in January 2023, it was announced that Paul Mescal would be cast as Lucius. Scott was unaware of Mescal's fame until he had watched his performance in the miniseries Normal People. Scott would ultimately cast Mescal in the lead role after a brief Zoom call. Austin Butler, Richard Madden, Timothy Chalamet and Miles Teller had also been considered for the lead role. Mescal was also chosen after Daria Sirkik and Michael Ireland had seen his performance in the West End revival of A Streetcar Named Desire, claiming that the ladies in the audience had been very vocal when he had taken his shirt off. Mescal proceeded to tell Scott about his physical capabilities due to him playing Gaelic football in his youth, while Scott said he found that it had a striking resemblance to Richard Harris, who had played Marcus Aurelius in the original film. To prepare for the role, Mescal didn't get in touch with Crowe to avoid audiences potentially thinking the film would define his career. He trained physically, ate sweet potato and ground beef to put on 18 pounds of muscle, and remembered Roman history to study it at school, in addition to practicing fighting choreography, horse training and sword fighting. In March 2023, Denzel Washington joined the cast. Washington said he regarded Ridley and his brother Tony as great filmmakers who never miss. The two had previously worked together on American Gangster, released in 2007. Initially, Barry Keoghan was cast as Emperor Caracalla, but he had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts with Saltburn. Freddie Hechinger would then take over the role. Pedro Pascal would then also be cast. He also underwent intense gladiator training for the role, which he found challenging but deemed the experience the most exciting of his career due to growing up with Scott's films. Harry Gregson Williams composed the score for the film, taking over from Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerrard, who scored the first film. Naturally, as seems to be commonplace with Ridley Scott films, there were plenty of historical inaccuracies. This included the siege of the Numidian city by Roman ships, and the presence of sharks. Numidia had already been part of the Roman Empire for about 250 years during the reign of Caracalla. University of Chicago historian Shady Barsitz described the film as total Hollywood bullshit. At the same time, baboons and rhinoceroses showcased on the Colosseum's arena are historically a test, though there is no record of gladiators riding a rhinoceros. There could be no naval battles in the Colosseum during the time of Caracalla, since the underground structures were equipped for staging traditional gladiator fights and wild animals, hunting games, and the complex house machinery such as winches and lifts. As a result, naval games would have been impossible. The real-life Macrinus was a praetorian prefect of Berber descent from North Africa who became Roman emperor in 1217 AD after conspiring against Caracalla, having him murdered. In real life, Macrinus was responsible for civil affairs in Rome and was the first Roman emperor to come from the lower equestrian class and not highly ranked senatorial class. He was not affiliated with gladiators. Washington noted that there was definitely black people in Rome at the time. The emperors Geta and Caracalla were not twins. Caracalla was about 1 year older than Geta. Lucius Verus was Roman emperor from 161 AD until his death in 169 AD, alongside his adoptive brother Marcus Aurelius. The character of Lucilia is also based on a real historical figure. The real Lucilia was the daughter of Marcus Aurelius and the wife of Lucius Verus. One of their sons was named Lucius Verus. Caracalla, after becoming the sole emperor, names his pet monkey as a consul. There's no historical evidence of this ever happening. This was possibly inspired by the early Roman emperor Caligula, who, according to Suetonius, intended to name his horse Ignatius as a consul. The idea presented in both gladiator films is the marking with fire of gladiators. However, this practice of marking did not happen, but only to slaves attempting to escape from their masters. Slaves running away from their masters were considered robbers because Romans believed when a slave tried to run away from his master, he was stealing himself from his owner. So they would mark them so people would know that he is a slave who tried to run away. Now, Gladiator II is a textbook example of Hollywood milking a beloved classic for profit, offering little more than reheated nostalgia and hollow spectacle. What was once a powerful and emotionally resonant film has now been reduced to a soulless sequel that feels more like a brand extension than a work of storytelling. Ridley Scott, once one of the most visionary directors in cinema, now seems to be chasing the shadow of his past successes. This film feels like the work of someone trying to relive their former glory without the same fire or finesse. It's frankly sad to witness, and perhaps it's time for Scott to consider stepping away with his legacy still intact. Paul Mescal, while a strong actor in more intimate character-driven roles like Normal People, is woefully miscast here. He lacks the gravitas and screen presence that made Russell Crowe's Maximus so iconic. The comparison is unavoidable, and unfortunately, Mescal falls way short. Denzel Washington delivers a surprisingly underwhelming performance, while Pedro Pascal tries to salvage what he can from this poorly written script. The film feels self-indulgent, overly long and riddled with historical inaccuracies, so egregious that they border on insulting to the Roman legacy. The original Gladiator had heart, soul, and was a timeless quality. Yes, it wasn't completely accurate, but it was a beautifully made film with a fantastic score and phenomenal performances from Joaquin Phoenix and of course Russell Crowe. The sequel, however, has none of that. It's a messy, disappointing project that feels like an insult to the original and to the audience. It's a missed opportunity, and worse, a completely unnecessary one. Films like this actually make me angry, because instead of coming up with a beautiful original script and a new story, Hollywood once again regurgitates the same old trash. This is a blatant cash grab from a studio and a director who should know better. And while I might be in the minority in my feelings towards this film, I was left overwhelmingly disappointed and frankly angry. Gladiator II gets a 4 out of 10.